When it comes to the Hobbit book versus movie, there are many notable differences, and some are quite surprising. When Peter Jackson announced that he'd be directing a trilogy based on J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings prequel, The Hobbit, the response was one of excitement. However, the trilogy left some fans of the book were confused, given how little the amount of source material was available to flesh out such an ambitious project. In his transformation of the book into a trilogy of big-budget Hollywood action blockbusters, Jackson took many creative liberties. This inevitably meant that the differences between the Hobbit book and movies were stark. Jackson implemented changes galore, adding in plenty of new content which was loosely adapted from Tolkien's other works. Some of it hit the mark, while the rest felt like superfluous filler. There's no question that in the case of the Hobbit book versus movie, Jackson did his best to please audiences. However, there were a few alterations that many fans didn't feel fit the story at all, making it seem like Jackson was trying to add extraneous connections to LOTR to capitalize on its success. Of all the characters in the Hobbit movie trilogy who weren't in Tolkien's novel, Tauriel is the one who requires the most investigating when discussing differences between the book and Peter Jackson's films. She's an original character created specifically for the screen, so represents one of the most controversial changes for Tolkien purists. However, in addition to her presence in general, a subplot for the character is also a huge deviation from Tolkien's Middle-earth, the romance between Tauriel and Kili. A romantic relationship between an elf and a dwarf is a notable difference from any of Tolkien's books, regardless of which characters are involved. While it's true that interspecies romances aren't unheard of, with the relationship between the human Aragorn and elf Arwen in Lord of the Rings being a prime example, Tolkien never spoke of a dwarf and elf becoming amorously entangled. While there's nothing to suggest he was against the idea, seeing Kili woo Tauriel throughout Jackson's movie trilogy was a distinct and notable change from the source material. The showdown with Smaug in The Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies, is one of the most epic sequences in Peter Jackson's movie trilogy. However, it's also a moment that happens almost completely differently in Tolkien's original novel. While Jackson kept several key details about how Smaug perishes, the moment is significantly elevated and filled with much more action than the death of the dragon in Tolkien's book. In the book, just like in the Battle of the Five Armies, Smaug is killed by an arrow shot in the right spot of his stomach. However, Smaug in Tolkien's novel doesn't cause anywhere near as much destruction. What's more, Bard doesn't simply get a lucky shot with his black arrow in the book. In Tolkien's version, Bard learns of Smaug's weak sport after being told about it by a bird. While this is definitely more whimsical, it also likely wouldn't have fit the tone of Peter Jackson's movie trilogy.